We are back now at the CBS News election headquarters, and we are joined by CBS News political contributor Jamal Simmons and CBS News political analyst Leslie Sanchez. And Leslie, I want to go to you because you come at this from a Republican perspective, and it was the man who represents your party who just said that he feels he's already won an election that is very much not decided. It is still an outstanding matter who will be the next president of the United States. What did you make of his remarks from the White House a short time ago?
I think it's a tremendous amount of puffery, to be realistic about it. It's about keeping people excited that the potential is there. I will tell you from some conversations I've had, the internal numbers for many of these swing states continue to look good for the president. So he's feeling optimistic. It's the way he talks about it, whether it creates a bit suspicion if he's going to cast doubt on the election results. But I think what he's really trying to say is that he's excited about where the numbers are going to turn out in the swing states.
Jamal, I know you, as I recall, are a native son of Michigan, correct? Or is it your father who is?
I am.
It seems like much of this will rest on the Wolverine state. Based on what you're seeing, do you believe Biden will be able to prevail?
I think he will. I've been looking at some numbers, and I had a conversation earlier with an elected official in the state who tells me that they think that the numbers in Wayne County, particularly in Detroit, will come in tomorrow, and over the next couple days, we will count those ballots, and then we'll be able to see that Michigan is going to go into Vice President Biden's column. I think the same thing is probably going to happen in Wisconsin. But here's the thing that we all have to be, very cautious of and worried about. The president very well could win one of these states. I mean, something could happen that we don't predict. And what he's doing now is calling into jeopardy the entire integrity of our elections. And so I think millions of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, 100 million Americans plus, spoke up and said something about what they want, the direction they want for the country, including many of his supporters. And we've got to respect the voice that they exercise during this process.
Leslie, I want to go back to you and get you to respond to something that Jamal just said. The integrity of our democracy being called into question, the way you put it was, it's just puffery. He's trying to keep people interested. Help me close the gap between those two points of view.
There's a lot of concern and certainly hand-wringing on both sides of the aisle, Tony. There's no doubt about that. The integrity of the election, above all, it's the most important aspect. The president tends to walk that line, right? He pushes it even further. We've got lawyers. That's the first call I'm going to make. There is no doubt that if it does become a series of too close to call elections in each of those swing states, that it is going to be investigated further to ensure that every vote that should be counted is counted. And so I do think it's part of his bravado of the way he talks. But the bottom line is ensuring that every vote that should be counted will be counted. And the president's going to have to fundamentally live with those results.
All right, Jamal Simmons and Leslie Sanchez, thank you both very much. We'll come back to you this evening, so don't go far. For you at home, we have much more news ahead, including the latest from the states that will be critical to deciding who is the victor in this election, Georgia and Pennsylvania. You're watching our CBS News 2020 America Decides. We are back now at CBS News election headquarters in Times Square. And one state we've been paying very close attention to all night is the state of Georgia. The state has not voted for a Democratic president since 1992, and it is now a toss-up in our projection. Mark Strassman is in Atlanta for us. Mark, good morning to you. We've been following the vote counting there all evening. What do you know?
Good morning, Tony. Well, with more than 90% of the vote counted here, President Trump is leading slightly, but the race is still considered too close to call. Democrats really had such high hopes of turning Georgia blue in 2020, but that is something that has simply not happened, as you mentioned, not happened here in Georgia since Bill Clinton carried the state nearly 3 decades ago. It could be a few days before. Well, actually, let me start with this. 91% of the expected vote is in. President Trump leading Biden by a narrow 2.5%. 16 electoral votes are up for grabs here. it could be a couple of days before all the mailed votes are counted here in Georgia. The demographics have been changing in the state in recent years. The suburbs have become younger, more diverse, less conservative. Our early exit polling indicates Biden is overwhelmingly capturing the black vote here, but Trump is overwhelmingly taking the white vote, around 70%. Also leading here, the president with voters who are not college educated. There are also two crucial U.S. Senate seats on the ballot here, both held by Republicans. One is heading for a runoff. The other is considered too close to call, although Republican incumbent David Perdue is leading. Georgia's Secretary of State has said he expects the winners of most races to be announced later this morning. Tony?
Mark, it's Ed O'Keefe. I'll take this one. One of the things that complicated the count in Georgia, I guess last night, is there was a plumbing issue, right?
Yeah, at State Farm Arena, which is where the Atlanta Hawks play, that was a processing and tabulation center for absentee ballots. There was a water leak. A pipe leaked this morning. None of the ballots were damaged, but that stopped the counting. And with about 50,000 uncounted ballots, they sent most of the workers home. A few workers have been working overnight, but the sense is that they're probably not going to finish it up again until sometime this morning. It was just one more little thing that went wrong here. Generally speaking, the day at the polls yesterday worked out great. That is, with so much early voting, Ed. As you know, Georgia set records. Nearly 4 million folks cast early ballots. The polling itself, the day at the polls went very, very smoothly. Wait times were like 10 or 15 minutes, very reasonable. But then they ran into issues with the tabulation, and here we are, you know, almost 10 hours after the polls have closed, and we still don't have a winner. And of course, very, very frustrating for Republicans and Democrats alike.
Tony, if you had leaky pipes holding up the 2020 ballot count on your 2020 bingo board, you're doing pretty well tonight.
The bingo board for 2020 is large. It's like, you know, it folds out many times. It is larger than any game board in your house. Mark Strassman, thank you very much. You bring up, you open the door to an interesting conversation here. You know, Georgia, I want to underscore for people, it is a state where it appears that President Trump has an edge, but we have projections that suggest that the trends continue, and I heard Anthony Salvanto talking about this earlier in the broadcast. If the trends continue, Biden still has a path there, yes, which is why it hasn't been called.
Because it runs through these suburban, fast-growing counties in and around Atlanta. We know there's also counting still going on in Pennsylvania, right?
Right, indeed, but we do not have Jerika Duncan, so we're going to stick right. Yeah, we're going to stick right.
Okay, well, we'll keep talking about this.
It passes through those key Democratic counties, and the water does not pass through the pipes there. It came out of the pipes, and so they are delayed.
Yeah, we're looking at places like Fulton County, where Atlanta is, Gwinnett County, a major suburban community just outside Atlanta, Cobb County as well. This is an area of Georgia that once put Newt Gingrich in Congress, and has now been completely transformed through people moving into the state, through just demography. And you've seen some of the most competitive congressional races in recent years held in that part of the country. So there's a belief among the Biden campaign and Democrats in the state that if it could happen 2 years ago, if Democrats could get elected to Congress, why couldn't a Democratic presidential candidate play well?
Not only congressional races, but the Stacey Abrams gubernatorial race was very close. Right. In fact, she still maintains that she may have won that race. There were some irregularities. And she did a tremendous job for the Democratic Party, pulling out new voters and pumping things up in that area around Atlanta. If Joe Biden holds on or finds a way to a victory there in Georgia, it'll be in large part because of what Stacey Abrams did. All right. Ahead, we are going to be talking to our voting and election law expert, David Becker. Important conversation there. Stay with us. Get some coffee. Welcome back already to the CBS News election headquarters in Times Square. Not sure what happened there, but joining us to look at where things stand right now is CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. He is putting his earpiece in as we speak. I can see he is now ready. He's giving me the smile. He's got the hands clasped. What do you know, Anthony?
Okay, so what we know is there are 5 key toss-up states as of this moment, and I am here with my good friend and colleague, Major Garrett, to break it down for you as we go.
So we're going to look at this map, and what we're going to show you right now, everything that's in white has not been projected, that's the phraseology we use by CBS. So even though we have Arizona and Nevada trending toward Biden, they're not officially projected, so we'll leave them in. So this is essentially what the map is from an electoral vote perspective as we look at it now. Even though Arizona and Nevada leaning, Hawaii will probably go Biden, we're not filling those in. But for the sake of the argument, let's fill those in as they're trending toward Biden and then show people what the map looks like.
Okay, so let's pull those into Biden's column.
Don't forget Hawaii.
Hawaii, we'll do that. And
so then let's pause for a second. So that's 244, 216. Now continue.
Okay, so what we really come down to at this point is Wisconsin, whether that breaks for the president or breaks for Joe Biden, okay, that could get them closer. All right, Major, let's put it in the president's column for the sake of argument, and Michigan into Joe Biden's column for the sake of argument, but also Georgia, right? And Georgia.
Pause what happened. Look what happened.
Yep, 276.
Right.
And I want to turn on the electoral votes here just to show everybody how many electoral votes each of these states has, because Georgia, with its 16, can trade off, of course, for Michigan. And what you're really seeing right now on the map is this eastern side, Democrats with still a couple of southern states in play, as well as the upper Midwest.
And if you put North Carolina, Biden, gets them a little bit closer, put it in Trump, the map begins to change. So all of these things have yet to be counted. Ballots have been legally cast. They've not been counted. And I want to emphasize for the audience, there is nothing pro-Biden or pro-Trump, anti-Biden or anti-Trump by saying all the votes that have been legally cast should be counted. Saying that they haven't been counted doesn't mean we're holding back something that we know. We actually don't know.
Some of them are from Republican areas, some of them are from Democratic areas.
When all this pans out, the president could win, right?
That's why they're toss-ups.
Exactly. And when it all pans out, former Vice President Biden could win. There is nothing about this process and saying, you know what, all the votes should be counted that have been cast that is trying to put the thumb on any scale. It's just saying two things. We don't know, and all the ballots legally cast must be counted.
This is hardly the first night at the decision desk where we have stayed and waited, and sometimes waited, for ballots to be counted.
Right. And speaking of waiting in any one respect, is anything that is, can you say anything that is leaning about these 5 toss-ups?
No, they are true toss-ups, and that's why we have them rated as such.
They are true toss-ups.
Yep.
That's from Anthony Salvanto. If they shift, we will let you know as soon as we know. We'll show you the data as we have it, and we will put that forward in as clear and direct a way as we possibly can.
All in real time.
So that's my camera, Anthony Salvanto. I'm going to thank you because that's what it says right up there. You are watching our CBS News 2020 America Decides coverage. I'm Major Garrett. That's Anthony Salvanto. This is the big board. I guarantee you we'll be coming back here soon.
The reinforcements here, and I'm already going to toss it to a correspondent in Michigan. Michigan, of course, one of the 5 battleground states where a sizable share of ballots are still being counted at this hour, and it is too soon to make a projection. And that correspondent is Janet Shamley, and she is in the crucial area of Detroit. Janet, good morning to you. What can you tell us?
Good morning. The Michigan vote would appear to favor the president, but Joe Biden says he is confident that it's going to go his way. And if that's the case, it's a flip from 2016, and he would increasingly need that happen to win. President Trump has roughly an 8-point lead in Michigan with just more than 70% of the vote counted. The Secretary of State tells us results likely won't be known until tonight, and the race is expected to tighten once absentee ballots are counted. Wayne County, which encompasses Detroit, has counted less than 40% of the vote. It's traditionally a Democratic county that went for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Joe Biden knew he would likely need to win here, and based on exit polls, he's counting on female and minority votes to bring him over the top. This is likely to be one of the closest races in the country, as it was in 2016, when President Trump won by fewer than 11,000 votes. If the president does win Michigan again, his path to the White House is increasingly likely. The Secretary of State told us a few hours ago that we would probably know tonight, but certainly well before the end of the week. Tony.
Yeah, key point there. Less than 40% of the vote in Wayne County, which encompasses Detroit, has been counted. There is a large outstanding number of ballots in that area. I agree. I think Michigan is going to be very tight again. It would appear, we heard from the Secretary of State, we'll get results within 24 hours. That was a revision from what she had said earlier. And the 24-hour period, though, could be any moment now, could be deep into tomorrow if you count, depends on when you count your dawn, I guess. Could already be tomorrow. Janet, thank you very much. The presidential race has been very close in Wisconsin as well. That is another state we are tracking, one of those undecided battleground states. And it's where we find our Adriana Diaz, who is in Milwaukee. Adriana, good morning to you. Under normal circumstances, with no pandemic and no election, it would just be about closing time in the bars in Milwaukee. Don't ask me how I know, but I imagine now it is pretty quiet and pretty cold there where you are.
Tony, how do you know that? Well, there's certainly none of that going on here tonight. It is quiet here, but they are working upstairs, counting those ballots. So far, more than 80% of the vote is in here in Wisconsin. And right now, Trump is leading by a few percentage points, but there are still votes to be counted. Many of those votes are absentee ballots. And we know from CBS News' Battleground Tracker poll that absentee voters are likely to be Biden voters. So that means Biden could get a bump later on as all these votes come in. But the question is, will it make a difference? Here's what we do know. Based just on the three most populous states here in Wisconsin, Dane County, where Wisconsin is, that went to Biden by a landslide. We expected that. But in Waukesha County, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, Trump won there as expected, but Biden outperformed. And the reason why this is important is this is a key metric that Democrats here were looking at to see how Biden might do statewide. We spoke to the chair of the Democratic Party here today, and he said if Biden gets anywhere from the mid-30s to the high 30s in Waukesha County, that means he could take the whole state. Biden got 38% of the vote in Waukesha County, but of course, the state is still too close to call. And the reason is because people are still voting, people are still counting the votes in the building behind me here in Milwaukee. They counted 150,000 votes today alone. They could only start at 7 a.m. The count continues. They have about 20,000 left here, and county officials say don't expect any word until at least 5 a.m. Tony?
All right, someone will be up. Wait, we got Ed O'Keefe here.
Central, so 6 a.m. Eastern for those of you keeping track.
We will definitely.
I am keeping track, Ed. Thank you.
We will definitely be up. We will be.
And
CBS
here.
This Morning will be beginning around that hour. And if you're a frequent viewer of CBS This Morning, you're probably wondering who this guy is because you don't get up that early if you're up at this hour. I'm Tony DeCopel. I was the relief team. I came in at 3 a.m. And we are still following the unfolding and yet to be decided presidential election. And we are joined right now by CBS News contributor David Becker, who is an election law expert and the founder of the Center for Election Innovation and Research. David, good morning to you. Exactly the kind of expertise we need right now because we have a president claiming a fraud is being perpetrated, and yet simultaneously we have what seems to be a normal process unfolding in several key states. Talk to us about the gap between what the president is saying and what we're seeing unfolding at this hour.
Well, here's what we know. We know that there are about 20 million ballots still left to be counted nationwide. We know that in the 5 toss-up states, there are about 5 million ballots left to be counted. And we know in states like Georgia and Wisconsin, the margin right now is only about 100,000 votes. And a lot of the counties that have the majority of ballots left to count are in, for instance, Milwaukee in Wisconsin, around the Atlanta and its suburbs in Georgia, and Savannah in Georgia. And in Michigan, the margin's only about 300,000 votes. So we've got a lot of ballots left to count. And I've been speaking with election officials, both Republicans and Democrats, who are working to count the ballots that were validly cast. That's the most important thing. And they're all committed to this. It doesn't matter what party they belong to. They know the rules were established beforehand. The campaigns knew those rules, and the election officials are now following those rules to count every validly cast ballot. And for instance, I talked to the Republican city commissioner in Philadelphia, who's been doing just an amazing job, Al Schmidt, along with his colleagues, and they still have a lot of votes still left to count in Philadelphia and in a lot of those Philadelphia suburbs. So what we need to do is we need to ignore the noise that's coming from the White House. They're trying to establish kind of a fraudulent fait accompli where we don't count the ballots that are cast. And we're going to do that. The election officials are going to make sure that's done. And we might be in for a long haul here because the margins are so narrow, and that's just what happens when we have margins this narrow.
David, when you talk to those people counting the ballots early this morning and you tell them what the president said, what do they say?
Well, what's amazing is I didn't have to tell them what the president said. A lot of them have actually gone on social media already and been very clear. Again, the Republican City Commissioner Al Schmidt in Philadelphia tweeted, "We are going to count all the votes." The Secretary of State of Georgia, others have been saying the same thing. They are going to count the votes. That is their job. They know how to do this. The rules were set in advance of the election. We had a lot of litigation before Election Day. That set the rules, and now we're following those rules.
David, Major Garrett, talking about the rules having been set, you and I have had this conversation, but I think the audience would appreciate hearing it directly from you. Because there was so much litigation and because the rules have been established, if the jurisdictions follow the rules, there isn't legal standing, is there?
There really isn't. I mean, there might be some frivolous claims brought here or there, and you can never say with absolute certainty that courts won't do something unusual. But I think the rules have been pretty clearly set here, and there's been reliance by voters upon those rules. And that reliance is very, very important. Once the voters understand certain rules and they rely upon them, courts give that great deference, and they've established those rules about when ballots have to be in by, whether they have to be postmarked, those kinds of things. And right now, the jurisdictions are doing a remarkably good job of following those rules. It's just taking some time to get through this amazing volume of early and mail votes.
Ed, did you have another question?
Well, all sorts of questions. Thank goodness we have David on salary, not on retainer, because we're charging him a lot to stick around late into the night. David, I guess, look, I want to reiterate something the president had said earlier, and it's important that we repeat this because people are going to hear it in news coverage later today. The president said he's going to go to the Supreme Court and tell them to order states to stop voting. He cannot do that, right?
Stop counting.
Stop counting.
To stop counting. Sorry, to stop. I keep messing this up. It's the hour.
Stop counting.
To stop counting. He cannot do that, right?
That's right. I mean, he has to go through the lower court process first. That it could either be through a federal or state court process, and you can go up on appeal from either a state Supreme Court or from a federal court, from the lower district courts to the circuit courts up to the Supreme Court. That could take some time. But again, his claims need to be found to have some merit. And right now, there is just no question what the election officials all around the country are doing, even in the states that aren't toss-ups, is they're still counting ballots that were cast today, that were in time today, and that they're going through the process they need to make sure they're validating every vote and that every vote will be counted. And so when those margins are really narrow, it makes us a little uneasy, but it's a normal process because we have to wait till all those ballots are counted till we'll know who won.
All right. Well, I am relieved to hear you are not paging through election law books looking for answers. You already know the settled law, and we are in new territory politically, but legally, things are well established. David Becker, thank you very much. We'll be checking with you later on in the evening. No matter who wins the next 4 years in the White House, they will need Congress if they want an agenda to be pushed through and for change to happen. So ahead, we are going to have Nancy Cordes, who's been kind enough to stick around, talk to us about the Senate races that have been decided and the contests that are still too close to call. You're watching CBS News 2020, America Decides. We're back now at our CBS News election headquarters in Times Square, and we are talking about control of the U.S. Senate. More than a third of the 100 U.S. Senate seats were on the ballot, and this morning we are beginning to get a clearer picture about which party might control the Senate in the next term. Nancy Cordes is still awake with us, and she joins us now. Chief Congressional Correspondent, what do you know?
Tony, two things we can say definitively at this hour. The Democratic path to the majority, which seemed so promising earlier in the night, has narrowed. It has not vanished, but it has narrowed. And we don't expect that we'll be able to declare which party is going to control the Senate anytime in the next few hours. Take a look at what's remaining to be called at this hour. I love that. Bring the Senate chamber up out of the floor. Take a look at the right-hand side of your screen. These are all the Republican Senate seats that were up for re-election tonight. You see a couple of blue squares there. One is the Democratic pickup in Colorado, where Cory Gardner, the Republican incumbent, has been defeated. And then in Arizona, we haven't called that race yet. We haven't projected a winner, but Mark Kelly, the Democrat, former astronaut, is likely to be declared the winner over the incumbent Martha McSally. So that's two potential pickups for Democrats. But remember, they need 4 or 5 in order to take control. And there are only
I thought it was 3 if they take the White House, 4 if they don't.
You're right. However, if you go over to the left-hand side of your screen, the Democratic side, you'll see one red square there. That is because Doug Jones has lost, we project, his race, and that seat will go to a Republican. So now Democrats need one more seat. And there are 4 races that we are still watching on the Republican side. So if they win 2 or 3 of those races, then they'll be in good shape. But it doesn't look so hot for them right now. North Carolina, we have not declared a winner. Same problem that we're having in the presidential race. There are still votes that need to be called. I think that race is about 94% counted at this point. Tom Tillis, the Republican incumbent, has a 2-point lead. Then you've got Maine. Susan Collins has a lead, but only about 2/3 of the votes have been counted there. So we really can't say anything meaningful about that race. And then you've got those 2 Georgia Senate races, the Perdue race and the Loeffler race. Loeffler definitely going to a runoff in January, and we're still watching to see what happens with Perdue. Very quickly, I'm going to leave this over here and tell you a little bit about what's been going on in the House tonight, because that's another really interesting story. You know, we went into the night projecting, a lot of outlets were projecting that Democrats would pick up more seats in the House, maybe anywhere from 8 to 18 seats. Well, things are going in the opposite direction. Take a look at some of the races we've been watching tonight, and we've been keeping a close eye on the 41 Democrats who won and flipped seats 2 years ago. They were the majority makers for the Democrats, but tonight some of them look like they're in danger of losing their seats. So you've got Debbie McCarsell-Powell in Florida. She's down to her Republican challenger. Then let's go to Iowa. Iowa won. Abby Finkenauer. Democrats were so proud to pick up that seat back in 2018, but tonight she is trailing her Republican challenger. Then in New York, you know, Tony, I'm sure you've seen the ads for Max Rose where he talks about the fact that Bill de Blasio is the worst mayor in the world. Well, take a look. He's not doing so hot himself. He is really trailing Nicole Maliotakis, so it's not looking good for him there either. And then one more I want to point out to you is in Oklahoma, Oklahoma 5. Another big pickup for Democrats, Kendra Horn back in 2018. But we've already declared that that her challenger is going to be victorious tonight. And so, you know, the story has really turned out very differently than what we expected when we went into the night.
All right, but quickly, Nancy, we do think Democrats will maintain control of the House?
Yes, Republicans would have had to pick up 17 seats. It doesn't look like they're going to do that, but they're certainly in a better position than they were before.
But the other thing we're going to have to factor for is which party controls the delegation or has the majority delegation in each of these states potentially if we get to that 269 electoral college top.
That is true, but we got to tuck in a break right now. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. We are following a presidential race that is too close to call. Stay with us. We'll be right back. As we approach the youthful hour of 4 a.m. in the East, ballot counting is ongoing in this country, and we just got a statement from the Biden campaign, which we will have momentarily. But for now, some stations will be leaving us for local election returns. For the rest of you, our coverage continues. You're watching CBS News 2020, America Decides. Welcome back to our special election coverage. Joining us once again to look at where things stand. In fact, wait, before we get to where things stand, as we let Anthony Salvanto find his position, I do want to get to Ed O'Keefe here, who has a statement from the Biden campaign responding to President Trump's remarks a short while ago.
Yeah, Jen O'Malley Dillon is the campaign manager for Biden for president and issued the statement just through email a little while ago. She says, quote, "The president's statement tonight about trying to shut down the counting of duly cast ballots was outrageous, unprecedented, and incorrect. It was outrageous because it is a naked effort to take away the democratic rights of American citizens. It was unprecedented because never before in our history has a president of the United States sought to strip Americans of their voice in a national election. Having encouraged Republican efforts in multiple states to prevent the legal counting of these ballots before Election Day, now Donald Trump is saying these ballots can't be counted after Election Day either." Later, she says, "If the president makes good on his threat to go to court to try to prevent the proper tabulation of votes, we have legal teams standing by ready to deploy to resist that effort, and they will prevail." She adds, "Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will stand for the right of all Americans to have their votes counted, no matter who they voted for. And we remain confident that when that process is completed, Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States."
Major, I consider you an expert in interpreting statements from political campaigns. Sure. What do you make of that one?
That the Biden-Harris campaign is not prematurely declaring victory, which the president did. They are saying we will count all ballots, and we are confident that once that is counted, America will know what happened.
Right.
Not, we already know what happened. That strikes me as internally more confident than a president saying, I know what's going to happen before the votes have been counted. He's trying to put his own thumb on the scale of public perception. The Biden-Harris campaign is not. And one other thing I would point out, Adam Kinzinger, Republican member of the House from Illinois, says the president is wrong to say what he said. Rick Santorum, former member of the Senate from Pennsylvania, said what the president said was wrong. Chris Christie said, as a former U.S. attorney, I don't agree with the president. He shouldn't say what he said. Those things are not consistent with counting votes and letting the process play out.
But let's see how many current Republican office holders say something like that as the day progresses today.
Given the returns we've seen so far in the Senate, we just heard from Nancy Cordes, I cannot imagine many Republican members of Congress or Senate coming out and chastising the president. The question also is, what cost will he pay for the statements he has made? You've got some former officials making comments, but the votes are in. They're just being tabulated now. So it's not like voters can penalize him as well.
Voters can't penalize him, but this is a country in which what the president says and what a rival campaign where the votes haven't all been counted can do, either in the court of public opinion or in any court where some litigation may arise.
Now, look,
and that has to play out.
Look, publicly they believe they will win, right? She says here, we believe that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. But to your point earlier, if the polling was so incorrect in so many of these states where it looked like Biden had a chance to win.
You and I stood right there this morning, many hours ago, yesterday morning, and made the point that the polls suggested Joe Biden had an advantage. That advantage has evaporated in many states.
So what's to say that that polling advantage that we thought was there is going to be there once Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin come in, where they believe they can still win tonight? So they're saying all this, and they may lose. But for now, what they're saying is we're going to respect the process. We want every vote counted. They believe, at least publicly, that Biden can win. And yes, mathematically he could, should most of those states go blue.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to say about the polling, and we'll get more from Salvanto coming up very shortly. We have much more coverage ahead. You are watching our CBS News 2020 America Decides, and deciding continues. Welcome back to our special election coverage here in Times Square. We promised you another dose of the big board, and let's give it to you now. Anthony Salvanto is there, looking a little bit beleaguered, but the numbers are before him. How you doing, buddy, and what do you know?
It has been a long, long night, but we are watching still 5 toss-up races. Just to refresh this for everybody, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. All of them came into this night as toss-ups in our estimates, and they are ending this night and rolling into the next day as toss-ups. Look, here's Wisconsin. I want to be specific about what we are seeing. In our estimates, there are 648,000 ballots still outstanding. They've been cast, but they haven't yet been counted. We are awaiting that. Michigan, it's a similar story with a different number, 1.6 million. Outstanding, they've been cast. Elections officials have not given us those vote tallies and those reports. And I'll pick another one here, Georgia, which is really tight. And in here, we've got a couple of large counties that have still yet to cast, yet to count all their votes, expected at 5.1 million, still 400,000. Many of them, some of them anyway, from some of the larger counties like DeKalb. Let me see what's in here. Show you 80%, 82,000 there, just as an example. So you're getting a broader picture across the country in all these states. There are still many ballots left to count.
And Anthony, where do things stand with Pennsylvania? Are we getting results in?
We haven't gotten too many of late. By of late, I mean within the last hour or so, Tony. But one of the things we're watching here is that if I show you this, 1.8 million still outstanding. They are from all over the state, so we don't know if they're Republican votes or Democratic votes, but we can make some inferences. If they're, say, from Philadelphia, let me give you that as an example, well, only 48% of what we have expected there is counted. Still over 400,000 left to count there in the city of Philadelphia as well. I mean, these could be ballots that are sitting there waiting to be counted. They could be ballots that are in the mail. We don't know. We're going to find out.
So we've got 1.8 million in Pennsylvania yet to be counted. That's an estimate. And the gap at present time between Joe Biden and President Trump is how much? I can't quite make it out from here.
Yeah, the gap here is about 700,000 votes, 2.2 million, 2.9 million. But a lot of the counties here, that you've seen are Republican-leaning counties. However, all night we've been following the story of the big vote difference between people who cast votes early, favoring Joe Biden, and people who cast votes on Election Day, and what really turned out to be a Republican turnout surge favoring the president.
Can you zoom in on the Philly region for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so we see Montgomery County, Philadelphia itself, Delaware. Those are three places that Biden expected to do well. Mm-hmm. But he'd like to be winning Chester and Bucks counties as well, right?
Well, we don't know that he won't. Look, so there's 106 to 107, so it's basically, you know, a razor-thin margin, and still almost 100,000 votes still to come.
And can you head up to Scranton?
Certainly can.
Where Joe Biden was born, in case you hadn't heard, because he likes to mention at least 9 times a day.
Look,
he's winning Lackawanna County, right?
Yeah. So there's Lackawanna, 61, 51. Let me show you what's, oh, that's all in. Okay. So there we go.
Can we push back on that camera? Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's see that again.
Sure. There's Scranton. So there's Lackawanna County.
Is that enough to help pad his advantages in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and potentially win the state?
Well, I think Allegheny out here we're watching because, let's see, yeah, still 250,000 ballots to come in from there. Obviously a Democratic area just right around Pittsburgh, too. So,
Anthony, did you think in your wildest dreams, because you're not just your poll, everyone's poll, they seem to suggest that the former vice president might have a 2, 3, 4 point advantage.
Yeah.
But we're going to end up with 4 or 5 big states where potentially the difference is 6 figures or less?
that is certainly possible. That is certainly possible. A lot of people had Biden up at least marginally in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Okay. So at the end of the day here, the model suggests certainly that he could still win it. Will he win it by 5, 6, 7 points? No. No.
Might be 1 or 2.
Yeah, it might well be. Yep.
All right, we shall see. Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much. Do you have additional commentary to make there?
I mean, it's just
very
this
interesting.
I mean, we've all thought about what this could look like this year, and this is one of those scenarios that was out there. A days-long count resulting in a very close finish.
But let's be candid. For the Trump supporters who are watching us, they would say, yes, it's a scenario, but it's not one you guys talked about very much.
That's true, because we had...
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We did not talk about a scenario where Democrats would lose seats in the House. We did not talk about a scenario
But we did talk about the days-long count.
Hold on, hear me out, because I'm speaking for the Trump supporters, because I know them, going to hear from them all the time. You didn't talk about the House Democrats losing seats. You didn't talk about the likelihood that Republicans could retain control of the Senate, which they may not or may not do, but it's a lot closer than a lot of Senate Democrats thought it would be, and the president would outperform in Florida, outperform in other places like Texas, win easily in Ohio, win easily in Iowa. You guys were not talking about that, and yet it appeared.
Well, you're dipping your toe in something very important here. We were not talking about it, not out of choice, but because the polls were very stable.
Which they would say, what else is new?
Well, you know...
I remember I watched 2016.
We all remember. But adjustments were made and people who were hopeful that those adjustments would capture the mood of the country. Apparently they haven't.
And the Trump supporters would say, whatever your models, whatever your attempt, you can't find us in the large enough numbers that we actually represent. And we're there, we're real, we love this guy, and we're going to show up for him, and we're going to defy your odds relentlessly. And that's one of the things that's playing out tonight. It hasn't played out in total. I don't know what's going to happen in those 5 toss-up states, but what you can say is the president has outperformed the polls yet again.
Yeah.
That we had not discussed.
We will be chewing. We will
the
chew that over.
days-long count. The
Well,
possibility.
we are talking about polling, and we have a reporter in Philadelphia, but we've got a raised finger from our polling expert, Anthony Salvanto, so I want to go to him.
May I quick, on this very program, 2 days ago, we ran through 2 scenarios. One was where Biden got a turnout surge. The other was the Republican turnout surge, which was based on polling, and we said that if there was large Republican turnout on Election Day, that a number of states would flip red. Every poll is a model. When we looked at the model on this show and showed that Republicans could flip these states, we talked about it.
All right.
No doubt. But the totality of the national conversation is different. The totality of the national conversation across all outlets, Trump supporters would say, I don't think I heard that very much.
Yeah,
That's what they would say.
and they're justified. I guess maybe they should answer the phone when the pollster calls next time, and then we'll get it right, you know?
Sometimes they don't want to.
Maybe they don't want to. All right, CBS News political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is in Philadelphia for us this morning. Caitlin, good morning to you. You're in a crucial area. What do you know?
Hi, good morning. Well, votes are still waiting to be counted. I'm in Philadelphia. There were over 400,000 mail-in ballots that are now being counted at the convention center across the street from my hotel right now. Those are not going to resume counting until tomorrow morning, officials say. Remember, Philadelphia is the most populous county in the state. The second most populous county, Allegheny County, is also waiting till tomorrow to finish counting ballots. About 146,000 ballots still remaining to be counted. This is a key state, as we know. Over the past couple of days, both the president and the former vice president have been furiously campaigning in Pennsylvania, competing for every last vote. We know and have known that Pennsylvania would not know the election tonight, would not know the results of the election this morning, I guess we're at, because they had not been able to start opening up mail ballots, absentee ballots, until 7 a.m. on Election Day. That was a decision made by the Republican legislature not to open up those ballots. That separates Pennsylvania from some of these other states that have been able to process these ballots. So we knew going into this that there would not be the results coming from Pennsylvania, but this is a state that offers 20 electoral votes, as we know, was determined by just 44,000 votes in 2016. And I can say that being on the ground here for the past 5 days or so, talking to voters at various polling locations, and as they've been dropping off their absentee ballots, they knew going into this how close this race would be, and they expressed their concern to us about how tight it would be as well, kind of knowing that every vote counts. But officials on the ground here have been telling us for weeks that we shouldn't be alarmed at the delay in reporting results, because they would still have to take the time to count all those ballots coming in. An unprecedented amount of absentee ballots here in Pennsylvania, the first time that they are voting this way.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much. I'm dying, actually, to hear from Anthony Salvanto and what you have been running through. Welcome back to CBS News election headquarters. Just as we went to break, we were talking about how Joe Biden has a path if he wins Arizona, even if he loses Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina. Arizona is emerging as a very crucial state for the Biden campaign, and we have a reporter there. Jamie Yuccas is in Phoenix. Jamie, good morning to you. What do you know?
Well, good morning to you, Tony. What I can tell you is that the governor of this state, Doug Ducey, who is a Republican, has come out and said, hey, everybody, there's 130,000 votes that still need to be counted, and that this race is far from over. I keep checking my computer right now. It does look like former Vice President Joe Biden does have about a 5-point lead at this point in time, but we haven't seen any real significant data come in almost the last 6 hours. So we got that initial surge of early voting and mail voting that came in very, very early, but then I haven't seen anything much since. So 82% of the vote has been counted at this point. This trend is unusual in Arizona, where the state has only voted for a Democrat one other time since 1952. What could also be historic here is if Democrats pick up a Senate seat. The state has not had two Democratic senators since 1948. That's when Harry Truman was president. So Mark Kelly, the Democrat, is up over Republican incumbent Martha McSally, and he did sound very confident when he spoke to his supporters. Take a listen.
I want to start off by thanking a few people. Gabby, my best friend, the ultimate partner through this campaign and in life. Gabby's the person who taught me about this side of public service and what it means to use public policy to improve people's lives, and who taught me to never, ever give up.
So it sounds like a victory speech there, but I can tell you that Martha McSally responded saying, like Mark, every vote should be counted. I can tell you right now the big hangup is Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix, Scottsdale, where I'm at here in Chandler, Arizona, where there are a large amount of Hispanic voters, Latino voters, and they came out much higher in a percentage than they did in 2016. They came out at 15% of the vote. Right now, they're looking at 19% of the vote. But of course, we're going to have to keep an eye on Maricopa County. Throughout the night, we did talk to their election supervisors. They said they would trickle out some results throughout the evening. But again, no significant drop in ballots that were cast on Election Day as of right now, Tony.
All right, Jamie Yuccas for us. Jamie, thank you very much. I'm here with Ed O'Keefe and Major Garrett, and we are going to bring in now Jamal Simmons and Leslie Sanchez, both of them CBS News political contributors and analysts. Leslie, I want to go to you first. Jamie was just talking about the Latino vote in Arizona. It's very different from the Latino vote in Florida. You know, Latin America is a big place, all the way from northern Mexico to the southern tip of South America. A lot of different people in that vote. Talk to us about their influence here in the 2020 count as it still unfolds before our eyes.
It's so dynamic, Tony, and it's changing across the country, right? There isn't one size fits all when it comes to the impact it's having in the states. If you look just at Arizona that she's talking about, she talked about Maricopa County. You have a tremendously red state with a rapidly growing Hispanic population that has traditionally done well. But if you just look at the numbers, the president just at where we are right now is about 16,000 votes fewer than he was in 2016. Now, where'd those other votes go? You could say third-party candidates, you know, people who held their nose and voted for him last time didn't this time. But you can't deny that if you have so many Latinos who are turning 18, about every 30 seconds a Latino is turning 18 in this country and can vote, a state like Arizona is going to be impacted. Same thing for Texas. Texas last time had about 8.5 million people vote. Almost 11 million people voted, and tremendously impacted. And it still swung in the president's direction because the Republicans don't have to win the Latino vote. They have to be in the high 30s and early 40s to win the state. And finally, if you take a look at what was happening in Miami-Dade, there was a 300,000 vote win by Hillary Clinton in Miami-Dade that the president managed to reduce to about 85,000 votes this go around, which can definitely play into what is happening in Florida. So all the way around, the Cuban vote in Miami, and the last one I'd leave you with is Gwinnett County. We're talking about Georgia. That is the new Latino South. That is the area where you have a lot of Hispanic immigrants and a lot of interracial families, non-Hispanic whites with Hispanic families blending together. They are the new suburbia. They have increased by 100,000 votes so far compared to 2016, and it's not going in Trump's direction. Definitely areas that are also different and wonderfully Latino.
Just one thing I'd like to observe, because what Jamie Yuccas said is really important. It's exquisite representation of an inherent contradiction of what the White House is saying. Doug Ducey, the Republican governor in Arizona, said, we've got to count all the ballots. Hello? Am I missing something?
Because the president just said stop counting.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just hold that right here in front of us. In Arizona, where the Republican governor and the White House think Trump might catch up, they want to count all the votes. In other states, whoa, 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 counting all the votes is somehow suspicious. No, it's not. Let's just hold that in stark relief right in front of us.
Jamal, since you're the Democrat in this conversation, should the Biden campaign have gone to bed? because they've all gone home for the night, and they issued this written statement from General O'Malley Dillon that says all the votes will be counted. But shouldn't they be up, watching this closely? Because, Americans are going to wake up in a few hours, and potentially, they may have. Biden got out before the president tonight asking for patience, saying all the votes will be counted. But the president came out and did what he did, said what he said, and immediately the conversation has gone in that direction. I mean, there's the potential that even if Biden pulls ahead in the next few hours and wins some of these states, that he may look like a weak winner because he was dragged through this process by the president in the middle of the night into Wednesday morning with the world watching. I guess a win is a win, but is this the way you think Democrats are going to want to win it?
And you might be making the case about why they should have gone to bed, because somebody's got to be fresh in the morning to get on the fight that's coming when Donald Trump gets up. I think I'm sure somebody is paying attention to this, and they have plans and scenarios. Bob Bauer has been talking about this. They've been running scenarios about an eventuality, maybe not exactly this, but something like this, where these things get put into a contest. And so they've got to figure out how to wage that fight. I'm thinking about the question you were just asking about Latino voters. I'm thinking about the focus we've been having about African-American voters and turnout. But 70% of the electorate in America is white. And I think we've got to also have a conversation about all the Americans who were raised in the same diet of the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal. The rule of law and the way that most Americans think the country ought to operate. And yet so many Americans support a president of the United States who doesn't seem to have any regard for any of those things. I think as a country, we're going to have to really wrestle with what it is to be an American in the 21st century, what it is we're willing to put up from our leaders. And Donald Trump or Joe Biden or not, the question I think that we're wrestling with is what kind of country is it that we're going to have, and what are we going to allow our leaders to do?
I think that is true, Jamal. However, the states deciding who will be president of this country, as we decide what that country should be, are actually not all that like the rest of the country. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin are three states that still to this day have a majority non-college educated white population. You might call them the working class. They have come out for Donald Trump in a huge way. As a Democrat watching this unfold, seeing it come down in many ways to those three states, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling that Democrats need to come up with a really blunt conversation. Listen, Donald Trump has said very directly that he understands the plight of the workers and of the Americans that you're talking about, and he's offering them a path about how to improve their lives. It's more nationalist, it's more xenophobic, it others people, it takes babies from mothers on the border. The Democrats have to come up with an alternate path that also addresses an economic and a future for these workers in the American society that has more diversity to it, that has a place where we all get to live together and we can figure out how to make this thing work. We can't just kind of dance around it and be subtle. We got to have a very frank and direct conversation. And frankly, I think a lot of white Democrats and white Americans are going to have this conversation with each other about how it is we chart this course. Because they don't want to hear it from people who look like me. I mean, I think they want to hear it from people who maybe look like Joe Biden.
We shall see. The Democrats may have 4 more years to come up with that message. The weight of the staircase can be very painful indeed. Leslie Sanchez and Jamal Simmons, thank you very much. Up next, we will check back in with CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto for the latest on the race for the White House. You're watching CBS News. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBS News Election Headquarters in Times Square. And as we approach 4:30 in the morning here in the East, if you can believe it, 4:30 a.m., we do not have a winner. We do not have a final call in the 2020 election, but we do have Anthony Salvanto standing by with the latest picture of where things stand. Anthony, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tony. Okay, everybody should know that there are 5 states we still classify as toss-ups, could still break either way. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Now, in all of them, there are remaining ballots that have been cast that have yet to be counted. In Wisconsin, for example, more than 500,000 still outstanding, and I'll take you through them. Michigan, same kind of picture. more than 1.4 million still outstanding. Now, where are these ballots coming from? They're coming from Republican areas, they're coming from Democratic areas. That's one reason why we don't have a complete picture yet of the whole state. Pennsylvania, 74% in, but 1.8 million still outstanding. We have reason to believe that many of them are absentee ballots, and for folks who've been watching all night, I'll just remind everybody that there's been a dramatic difference this night between people who cast ballots absentee or by mail and those who voted in person. We saw a huge Republican surge in turnout among people voting in person. Now, go down to Georgia, and we've got a really close race. I'll show you what's outstanding there. 92% is in. Often, we can say something more about a race, but this one is just so tight. 400,000 ballots left, and many of those are from Democratic areas. North Carolina as well, just walk you through it. Again, a lot in, very tight race so far, but still almost 300,000 ballots left. Same story everywhere, tens of thousands, actually millions of ballots left to count. Tony.
All right, Anthony, get some tea. Or are you going to have questions for him? Because I was going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did we do Wisconsin? Because I was trying to read up here for a second.
Yep.
So our Adriana Diaz in Milwaukee just witnessed the Milwaukee city officials finishing the absentee count of 169,000 ballots. And on her Twitter feed, she's posted the video of the woman being escorted by police escort to a car to go deliver them to the Milwaukee County officials.
Isn't that exciting?
To the tally. Well, it is exciting on a morning like this when we're waiting for them. Yes.
I was not being sarcastic.
It's also transparent.
It is.
It's also to make sure that there is a recorded record of what happens, how this is playing out. And I want to tell everyone this. We can do this. You know how I know? Because in 2016, at about 3 a.m., the President of the United States was declared. It was Donald Trump. By 77,000 votes in 3 states.
Right.
All those votes were counted. They were verified. They were close margins. And it happened. We know how to do this. Wait for the count. It will be done. It will be verified. It will be believable. Wait for it. That's what's going to happen. We can do this.
We are bumping up. You have something to add?
Let's look at Milwaukee real quick. What would he need?
Milwaukee? Here. So it's Milwaukee 174 to 110 with still more than half, slightly more than half still to be counted.
All right, well, we are bumping up to the end of our evening here. We're going to take a short break and then resume programming in the morning. You guys have been here for more than 11 hours by my calculation.
Who's counting?
Care to wrap up your experience so
I just
far?
did.
Okay.
We can do this.
Mr. O'Keefe.
It's not over. We'll see you a little later this morning.
Yeah.
It is not over. Yeah. You two are going to be going to bed.
Changing a shirt.
Changing a shirt, yeah.
Changing a shirt. I'm going to put on a stocking cap, get a little bit of shut-eye. I think Mr. Salvanto is going to be doing the same. We're going to pour some cold water on the equipment, let everything cool down, and then we're going to be back at 6 a.m., I believe. There is much more news on your local news station, on this CBS station. A special edition of CBS This Morning with myself, Gayle King, and Anthony Mason begins at 6 a.m. Eastern, 3 a.m. in the West. Stick with CBS News and CBSNews.com for the latest on the race for the White House. Thank you for watching CBS News 2020. America decides. Election day is over, but the count continues. You do not want it to be fast. You want it to be accurate. And we can do this, America. Be patient. Thanks for watching.
We are getting some breaking news. We want to take you now to our local coverage at CBS New York.
We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying votes is finished.
President Trump claiming victory. Joe Biden says wait for the votes to be counted. Right now, the race is still too close to call. We'll break down the numbers coming up.
Another Republican claiming victory, this time on Staten Island in the contentious race for New York's swing 11th congressional district.
New Jersey voters approve recreational marijuana. What this means for the future of pot in the Garden State.
Good morning on this Wednesday, November 4th. I'm Chris Ragg.
I'm Mary Calvi. Welcome to CBS News This Morning. We will have your election 2020 coverage in just a moment. But first, let's get you a check on the forecast. Elise Finch is here with the very latest. Elise.
Good morning to you, Mary and Chris. Good morning to you folks at home. So we're off to another pretty cold start out there. These are actual air temperatures, 27 degrees for Monticello, 31 for Sparta, Edison, and Poughkeepsie, 34 for White Plains, 38 for Babylon, 42 degrees for Central Park. So we do have a cold start to the day, that is for sure. But as you take a look, your Skycast satellite and radar is fairly quiet. What we are going to watch is a warm front push its way north across the area, and we will see some warmer air moving moving in today. So your day part forecast looks like this. We definitely start out this morning needing the coat. By noon, mostly sunny, 58 degrees, and we're expecting a high temperature today of 62. A little bit breezy, but definitely not windy, so things should be feeling better. Chris, Mary?
Elise, thank you. 4:33 right now. It is the morning after the election, but the presidential race remains up in the air.
President Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden are still competing in key states that would deliver a victory. Now, we are live with team coverage this morning. 6 reporters across the tri-state area covering every angle of the presidential election and, of course, local races. Let's begin in studio with CBS 2's Alice Gaynor covering the presidential race for us. Alice, good morning.
Good morning. Has anyone gotten any sleep? I mean, it has been a long night. The very latest now, about an hour ago, the Associated Press projected former Vice President Joe Biden to win Arizona. President Trump spoke early this morning, falsely claiming victory and telling supporters he will go to the Supreme Court to stop legal mail-in ballots from being counted. Former Vice President Joe Biden's campaign says it will fight efforts by President Trump to prevent those ballots from being counted. CBS News has not projected a winner in the presidential race. At least 5 key battleground states are too early to call. Those include Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Just before 2:30 this morning, President Trump told a packed room at the White House,
"This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election."
The president also tweeted, "We're up big, but they are trying to, quote, steal the election." Twitter has flagged the statement, saying it might be misleading. Neither candidate has secured the 270 electoral college votes needed to claim victory, as CBS estimates about 5 million votes still need to be counted. Pennsylvania's governor tweeted this morning that his state still has over 1 million mail ballots to count. After midnight, former Vice President Joe Biden spoke at a drive-in rally outdoors at his campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware.
We knew because of the unprecedented early vote and the mail-in vote that it was going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished.
CBS News projects President Trump has won the battleground states of Florida, Ohio, and Iowa. Exit polling revealed supporters of President Trump are more concerned about the economy, even over COVID. CBS News projects Biden has won a number of states, including New York, Massachusetts, and California, picking up the Golden State's 55 electoral votes. A CBS News exit poll finds a majority of voters think the U.S. efforts to control the coronavirus are going badly, which may help Biden. Now, when it comes to the tri-state area, both the Associated Press and CBS News project that in addition to New York, former Vice President Joe Biden won New Jersey and Connecticut. But again, either candidate needs to secure at least 270 electoral college votes. Chris?
And Alice, in some of those key states that we're waiting for, how many votes are actually up for grabs, roughly?
That's right. We have a breakdown for you. Okay, so we want to talk about Wisconsin. That's 10 electoral votes there. We've got 16 in Michigan, 20 in Pennsylvania, talking about North Carolina. We've got 15 there, 16 in Georgia. That's a total of 77 electoral votes still up for grab. Mary, Chris.
All right, Alice Gaynor. Alice, thank you so much. And now to races here in our area in the contentious battle in New York City's 11th congressional district.
With 95% of the precincts reporting, Republican challenger Nicole Malliotakis has declared victory against Democratic incumbent Max Rose. CBS News' John Diaz joins us live now from outside her campaign headquarters on Staten Island in New Dorp with more. John?
Yeah, good morning to both of you. Now, Nicole Malliotakis' opponent, Democratic incumbent Max Rose, has not yet conceded to this race, saying that he is still waiting for all the votes to be counted. He's still waiting on all those absentee ballots. But it does appear, though, that New York City's only swing district, the 11th district, has gone back to the Republicans. All indicators point to Nicole Malliotakis as the victor. The district, which makes up Staten Island and southern Brooklyn, traditionally voted Republican until Rose, an Army veteran and former U.S. Ranger, flipped it back in 2018. Now, the 11th district race has been one of the most contentious in the country. It was a fierce competition and expected to be a close one, but Malliotakis playing to the voters. Its base is white, blue-collar voters, including a substantial number of active and retired New York City police officers and firefighters. Take a listen to what both candidates had to say.
Well, look, a vote for me is a vote to bring public safety back to the streets of our city, to restore law and order, to make sure we reopen our economy, we bring back the American jobs lost here in New York and across the country, and to preserve the American dream.
I am not ignorant to the realities of the results that have already been turned in. But I do know that my opponent will join me in ensuring that the Board of Elections must conduct a fair and transparent process that demonstrates the strength of our democracy rather than undermining it.
Now, in her formal statement released earlier this morning, Militakis is saying this race was about the hardworking New Yorker who obeys the law, pays their taxes, and gets up every morning and goes to work. We are live this morning from New Dorp, Staten Island. John Diaz, CBS 2 News.
John, thank you. 4:38 right now in New Jersey. Voters have overwhelmingly passed a resolution to legalize recreational marijuana.
CBS 2's Corey James is live in Jersey City with more this morning. Corey?
And Chris and Mary, good morning. We all knew this election was going to be a big one across the country, but is extremely big right here in New Jersey. As you just mentioned, an overwhelming majority of voters said yes to the legalization of marijuana. Now, this news comes as the numbers for this ballot measure are still coming in and being counted. However, so far, we know more than 65% of voters supported the sale of recreational marijuana for those who are 21 years old and older. With this initiative passing on the state level, that means New Jersey will join more than a dozen other states that have approved legalizing marijuana. Now, CBS 2 spoke with political expert Jeanette Hoffman, who tells us the state legislature is now tasked with passing a law and putting guidelines in place.
Setting up licenses for people who want to set up dispensaries. You're talking about, setting up a limit for THC on products such as edibles. You're talking about setting up fines for driving under impairment of marijuana. You're talking about setting up the tax level of how this product is going to be taxed and where that money is actually going to go. Will it go back to communities? Will it go back to a general fund in the budget?
And ultimately, that means people interested in buying marijuana in about 2 months in January likely will not be able to do that at the start of 2021. And that is because in the past, with other states that passed similar legislation, it has often taken them about 4 years to get the cannabis industry set up with rules and regulations. Also important to mention, there is opposition to this now passed ballot measure, specifically on the local level. In fact, 70 municipalities have already signed a pact to not allow dispensaries in their towns. Reporting live in Jersey City, Corey James, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Corey, thank you. Now let's take a look at the returns in New Jersey's U.S. Senate race. Incumbent Democrat Cory Booker is the projected winner with 63% of the precincts reporting. He faced off against Republican Rick Mehta.
Democrats had high hopes of gaining control in the U.S. Senate, but so far it hasn't happened. Democrats took 2 seats from Republicans in Colorado and Arizona. Republicans flipped a Senate seat in Alabama, but Democrats need a gain of 3 to 4 seats to win control of the Senate. Several races remain unresolved, but there's a chance control won't be decided until a possible runoff election in Georgia in January.
Well, Queens voters have chosen a new borough president after a special election was canceled because of the pandemic.
With all the votes in, City Councilman Donovan Richards Jr. is the winner with 67%. He faced off against Queens County Republican Chairwoman Joanne Areola, who scored 31%.
And Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is headed for a second term with 91% of the vote reported in the 14th district. Ocasio-Cortez has 69% ahead of John Cummings with 31% and Michelle Caruso Cabrera with just 1%.
441 right now. Coming up, potential new faces in Congress.
How this election could shift the focus of legislation on Capitol Hill. We'll have those stories coming up next. Welcome back to CBS 2 News this morning. The transmitter tower atop One World Trade Center was among the New York City landmarks lit up in red, white, and blue for election night. The Empire State Building was looking good, as was nearby Madison Square Garden, and the Kosciuszko Bridge also bathed in patriotic colors for you. There you have it. Time now for checking your forecast here at 4:44. Let's jump over to Elise Finch. We have a nice day on hand, too, right?
We really do. We've sort of turned the corner here. We were in a wet pattern for a while, and now it looks like we're starting a dry pattern. So we're talking about temperatures temperatures that are definitely cold out the door this morning, so no big surprises there. Temperatures ranging from the upper 20s to the low 40s, with Central Park at 42 degrees. And as far as the 24-hour temperature change, no change for Central Park, but it's 5 degrees cooler right now than it was this time yesterday for Babylon and Greenwich, 12 degrees cooler in the Hamptons, 11 degrees cooler for Monticello and Brick. So for some, definitely feeling cold out there this morning, but not to worry. Things do get mild. We are going to see an influx of mild air as a warm front, pushes its way north across the area later today. So we are going to see some milder air moving in. As you take a look at your Skycast satellite and radar, again, not a whole lot to look at other than that warm front that will lift its way through. Higher pressure dominating our weather for today. So not a whole lot to talk about, which is good. Nice and quiet. That's how we like things from time to time. So we will see mostly sunny skies today and temperatures that'll be close to normal, if not a few degrees above. And overall, a nice dry day for us. So overall, today is a nice day. We head into tomorrow. It's going to be another fairly nice day. We'll see lots of sunshine and even some warmer temperatures. So things will remain quiet. And by that, I mean dry straight into the weekend, which I think for most people is a welcome change. So for today, sunny and 62 degrees is what we're expecting in the city. The winds out of the south-southwest just 5 to 15 miles per hour. So definitely much calmer than what we had over the past 2 days. For tonight, we dip down to 52 degrees, clear skies, cool conditions. The suburbs will be a little bit colder with those clear skies, 30s and 40s versus the 52-degree temperature we're expecting in the city. And then your 7-day forecast really shows this change. 62 degrees today with lots of sunshine, 65 for tomorrow. So even milder by Friday, mostly sunny, and 68 degrees will be close to 70 degrees on both your Saturday and Sunday, and still in the mid and upper 60s early next week. Mary, Chris?
Elise, thank you. 447 right now. Turning to Long Island now. Voters in Nassau and Suffolk counties cast ballots in 2 pivotal congressional races.
A 3-term incumbent Republican Lee Zeldin beat Democrat Nancy Goroff to win New York's 1st district. And for the 2nd congressional district, Republican Andrew Garabino defeated Democrat Jackie Gordon, winning the seat vacated by retiring long-term Congressman Peter King.
And in New York's 17th district, it appears Democrat Mondaire Jones has won the seat that's had long held by longtime Congresswoman Nita Lowey.
In a tight race, Jones has 48% of the vote compared to 45% for Republican Maureen McCardle-Schulman. CBS News' Kevin Racone is live at the Board of Elections in White Plains this morning with more. Kevin.
And Chris, here in the 17th district, the congressional seat here has been held by Nita Lowey for the last 7 years. Before that, Elliot Engel for the last decade. But now there's been a new change. There's a new progressive wave, and that's part of what Mondaire Jones represents here in Westchester County. He challenged Nita Lowey in a primary, and after that challenge, she opted to retire. He was able to defeat the Republican Maureen McCardle-Schulman, a retired New York City firefighter, last night. And as he transitions to a role in Washington, Jones talked about his relationship with the woman he's now going to replace, Nita Lowey, who's the chair of the House Appropriations Committee. She's someone with experience, and that's something Jones says he's tapping into as he prepares for his next chapter.
There is disagreement at times on policy issues. And one thing that I'm really encouraged by is the fact that Congresswoman Lowey and I want to get to the same place on any number of policies. We may differ as to some of the details, but I'm really, really grateful to be charting my own path forward.
And Jones campaigned on progressive issues, including police reform, Medicare for all, and the Green New Deal. Live outside the Board of Elections in White Plains, Kevin Rincon, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. And City Councilman Richie Torres is the projected winner of the 15th Congressional District. Torres will become the first openly gay Afro-Latino member of Congress. He's leading Republican Patrick DeLisis the race to replace Congressman Jose Serrano.
And in the 16th District, Democrat Jamal Bowman is ahead of Republican Patrick McManus. Bowman beat out Congressman Elliot Engel in the Democratic primary. Experts say these local races represent a changing of the guard for New York's congressional delegation.
It means that there will be less attention to the business of Wall Street, that there will be less attention to real estate interests in New York overall, that there will be more attention to income equity questions and to social equity questions generally, and probably more attention to climate-related legislation.
Coming up next, no commuters, no customers.
How suffering subway station businesses are trying to stay afloat during the pandemic. Giving you a look at the LIE this morning on this Wednesday morning. It is 4:52, and it appears that the cold is now going to be behind us. Elise?
At least for a little while, it sure is. We are going to see a significant warm-up starting today. I know it might be hard to imagine because it is still cold out there this morning, but we are going to see sunny skies this afternoon, much calmer winds, and a warming trend that does start today. We will be pushing 70 degrees by this weekend. I don't think I'll get too many complaints about that. For today, we are starting off with some very cold temperatures, some locations in the 20s and 30s this morning, but by this afternoon, we'll see high temperatures in the upper 50s and low 60s with 62 degrees expected for Central Park. We get mostly sunny skies today, and again, the wind should be nice and calm. So overall, what you see is what you get in terms of temperature. We will not have to factor in the winds today, so it is going to be very nice. And as we mentioned, we are headed for even warmer temperatures. We'll talk about why that is coming up in just a bit, but for now, I'll send it back to you.
Elise, thank you. 4:53 right now. One of the most powerful storms to hit Central America in years plowed into Nicaragua on Tuesday. Category 4 Hurricane Eta battered homes and infrastructure and threatened deadly flooding. 140-mile-an-hour winds pulled roofs off houses, knocked down trees and power lines, and flooded streets. There have been no reports of injuries or deaths.
Well, more than a dozen members of the Shinnecock Indian Nation are staging a protest by camping out on the east end of Long Island. They're demonstrating against what they call roadblocks to their economic advancement. They want the state to drop its opposition to their giant electronic ad towers. They say the revenue from ad sales pays for health care, safety, and road repair on the reservation.
We don't have a tax base or tax revenue, so these economic development is, literally puts food on the table for our tribal members, and it improves the quality of life.
Southampton's town supervisor says he's working with the tribal leaders on meaningful economic development. The governor's office opposes the towers, but says it's working with the Shinnecock Nation on possible solutions.
4:54 right now. Subway ridership remains down because of the pandemic, and businesses underground and near transit stops are suffering. The MTA says the 392 retail slots at various places, 72 of them are now vacant. 24 of those vacancies are at Grand Central Terminal. Though the agency says not every single vacancy is due to the pandemic, Grand Central Watch says it used to see 100 customers a day.
Now, probably about 15 that actually walk in. We still do stuff by mail. We're lucky to have a lot of good wholesale accounts. So, we are going to survive.
We used to have like 15 rackets almost every day, We're down to maybe a couple of, maybe 3 or 4.
Last month, the MTA announced a financial relief plan for the duration of the pandemic for these businesses, moving from a fixed rent system to a percentage rent system.
4:55 for you right now. Still ahead, the race for the White House. One side claiming victory, the other side urging patience as votes continue to be counted.
And the Garden State is about to get greener now that voters have approved recreational marijuana. You're watching CBS News this morning.
We are getting some breaking news. We want to take you now to our local coverage at CBS New York.
Both of you, Nicole Malliotakis' opponent, Democrat incumbent Max Rose, has still yet to concede to this race, telling us that he is still waiting for all the votes to be tallied. You just heard they're about 95% now. He's still waiting for all of the votes to be tallied, including those absentee votes. But it does appear, though, that New York City's only swing district, the 11th district, has gone back to the Republicans. Now, all indicators point to Nicole Malliotakis as the victor of the district, which makes up Staten Island and southern Brooklyn. Traditionally voted Republican until Rose, an Army veteran and former U.S. Ranger, flipped it back in 2018. Now, the 11th district race has been one of the most contentious, to say the least, in the country. It was a fierce competition and expected to be a close one, but Malliotakis playing to the voters. Its base is white, blue-collar voters, including a substantial number of active and retired New York City police officers and firefighters. Take a listen to what both candidates had to say.
Well, look, a vote for me is a vote to bring public safety back to the streets of our city, to restore law and order, to make sure we reopen our economy, we bring back the American jobs lost here in New York and across the country, and to preserve the American dream.
I am not ignorant to the realities of the results that have already been turned in. But I do know that my opponent will join me in ensuring that the Board of Elections must conduct a fair and transparent process that demonstrates the strength of our democracy rather than undermining it.
Now, in her formal statement released early this morning, Militakis saying, quote, this race was about the hardworking New Yorker who obeys the law, pays their taxes, and gets up every morning and goes to work. We are live this morning from New Dorp, Staten Island. John Diaz, CBS 2 News.
John, thank you. 5:05 right now. In New Jersey, voters have overwhelmingly passed a resolution to legalize recreational marijuana.
CBS 2's Corey James is live in Jersey City this morning with more on that. Corey.
Yeah, we know for New Jersey residents, one of the important questions on the ballot this year was whether or not to legalize marijuana in the state. And as you just kind of mentioned, an overwhelming majority of voters said yes to legalizing it. And this is coming as those numbers are still being counted this morning. But so far, we know 65% of voters in the state supported the sale of recreational marijuana for those who are 21 years old and older. With this initiative passing on the state level, that means New Jersey will join more than a dozen other states that have approved legalizing marijuana. And CBS 2 spoke with political expert Jeanette Hoffman, who tells us the state legislature is now tasked with passing a law and putting guidelines in place.
Setting up licenses for people who want to set up dispensaries. You're talking about, setting up a limit for THC on products such as edibles. You're talking about setting up fines for driving under impairment of marijuana. You're talking about setting up the tax level of how this product is going to be taxed and where that money is actually going to go. Will it go back to communities? Will it go back to a general fund in the budget?
And really, that all means people interested in buying marijuana in about 2 months in January most likely, will not be able to do that at the start of 2021. And that is because in the past, with other states that passed similar legislation, it has often taken them about 4 years to get the cannabis industry set up with rules and regulations. Also important to mention, there is some opposition with the passing of this ballot measure, and that is coming on the local level. So far, 70 municipalities have already said they will not allow dispensaries in their towns. I'm Corey James reporting live in Jersey City for CBS 2 News.
Okay, Corey, thank you. Let's take a look now at the returns in New Jersey's U.S. Senate race. Incumbent Democrat Cory Booker is the projected winner with 63% of precincts reporting. He faced off against Republican Rick Maida.
Democrats had high hopes of gaining control in the U.S. Senate, but so far that has not happened. Democrats took 2 seats from Republicans in Colorado and Arizona. Republicans flipped a Senate seat in Alabama, but Democrats need a gain of 3 to 4 seats to win control of the Senate. Several races remain unresolved. There is a chance control will not be decided until a possible runoff election in Georgia in January.
Well, leading up to Election Day, you may have seen stories of stores of boarding up their windows.
Just one of the preparations underway for potential unrest, along with extra security at Trump Tower. CBS 2's Natalie Dedridge joins us live from 5th Avenue in Midtown with more. Natalie.
Well, Chris, Mary, we did see some small rallies form last night, but overnight it has been calm and peaceful. In fact, people have been commenting that they've been seeing more officers on the street than people walking around. Now, if you look down the block here, you can see it is barricaded off. We are a block from Trump Tower. Also, those stores you were mentioning, those boarded up in preparation for potential unrest this election may still spark. NYPD officials say thousands of extra officers are out patrolling overnight. They'll continue to have an increased presence over the next few days as ballots are counted and results come in. Now, we are just a block, as I mentioned, from Trump Tower. There was extra security there tonight. A dump truck was out front. There were rows of barriers protecting the building. And there are also nearly a dozen rallies and protests planned for later today. So police, they'll be looking for any criminal opportunists trying to stir up problems at otherwise lawful demonstration or those who may cause unrest to loot or destroy, as was the case at protests we saw in late May and early June. Here's what NYPD had to say earlier.
My message to anyone who wants to cause violence and destruction is, don't even try it. We know who you are, and you will be arrested.
And so far, we have counted at least 10 protests that are planned in the city for later today in Manhattan, Brooklyn, as well as Queens. And the NYPD, they say that they are prepared. We are live in Midtown. Natalie Dedridge, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Natalie, thank you. Well, Queens voters have chosen a new borough president after a special election was canceled because of the pandemic.
With all the votes in, City Councilman Donovan Richards Jr. is the winner with 67%. He faced off against Queens County Republican Party Chairwoman Joanna Ariola, who scored for 31%.
Well, Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is headed for a second term with 91% of the vote reported in the 14th district. Ocasio-Cortez has 69% ahead of John Cummings with 31% and Michelle Caruso-Cabrera with just 1%.
It is 5:10 coming up. We're breaking down the congressional races on Long Island, including a seat now up for grabs following the retirement of a longtime lawmaker.
And a confrontation at the polls caught on camera why the NYPD had to step in. We'll have those stories coming up next. Hey, good morning. Welcome back to CBS 2 News this morning. The transmitter atop One World Trade Center among the New York City landmarks lit up in red, white, and blue for election night. The Empire State Building looking good, as was nearby Madison Square Garden. And the Kosciuszko Bridge also bathed in patriotic colors last night. And now it is time for a check your forecast. It was a beautiful night last night. It's going to be a beautiful day today. Here's Elise Finch. Hi, Elise.
Good morning to you, Chris. Want to review yesterday's high temperatures because temperatures are, well, trending upward. So yesterday, these were your high temps. 52 for Newburgh, for Sussex, for Bridgeport. 55 degrees yesterday was the high temperature in Belmar. 58 for Toms River, New Jersey. Yesterday, Central Park made it to 53 degrees. Same for Teterboro. A little bit cooler for White Plains at 51, but LaGuardia at 55, and Newark and JFK both hit 56 degrees yesterday. Today, we're expecting a high of 62 degrees for Central Park, so well above the 58 degrees that the National Weather Service considers normal for this day of the year. Sunrise this morning, 6:30 a.m., and we are going to see plenty of sunshine today. Now, we do have a little bit of a cold start to the day. That's not unusual, right? It's November, but what we're going to see is a warm front push its way through the area, so we start to see warmer air filtering in this afternoon, and today will be sun-soaked. High pressure is going to keep things nice and clear for us. So, mostly sunny, mild temperatures today, and things will get even milder as we head into the day tomorrow and toward the weekend. So, we're going to see an influx of warmer air. Temperatures are going to be in the 60s, close to 70 degrees by the time we hit the weekend. So the first full weekend in November will absolutely be a rewind here to some much warmer temperatures. I think things will be feeling great by most people's standards. Now, this warming trend takes us through the weekend, as I mentioned, and temperatures will be 5 to 15 degrees above average. We will see temperatures in the 60s and some 70-degree temperatures for some of the warmest locations. That's just how warm things are going to get. So for today, sunny and 62 degrees is what we're expecting in the city. The wind calm down considerably, so we'll see winds out of the south-southwest 5 to 15 miles per hour. Tonight, we dip down to 52 degrees in the city. Clear skies, cool conditions. The suburbs will be obviously a little bit colder, more like 30s and 40s. And then your 7-day forecast, well, we had been in a bit of a wet stretch. Now it's a dry stretch, and you can see lots of sunny icons there from today straight through to early next week, with temperatures after today in the mid and upper 60s. And with that, I'll send it back to you.
Elise, thank you. 5:15 right now, and turning to Long Island now. Voters in Nassau and Suffolk counties cast ballots in 2 pivotal congressional races. 3-term incumbent Republican Lee Zeldin declares victory against Democrat Nancy Goroff in the race for New York's 1st district. For the 2nd congressional district, Republican Andrew Garbarino also declared victory against Democrat Jackie Gordon for the seat vacated by retiring long-term Congressman Peter King.
CBS 2's Carolyn Gussoff joins us live from Mineola this morning with more on these races. Carolyn?
Victory from the 2 Republicans in seats that were considered potentially flippable, even though tens of thousands of absentee ballots have yet to be counted. Both Lee Zeldin and Andrew Garbarino indicate that those ballots cannot overcome their lead. That Central and Eastern Suffolk County, Lee Zeldin, an ardent supporter of President Trump, faced a hard-fought challenge from Stony Brook scientist Nancy Goroff. But Goroff's campaign manager said last night that we do owe it to voters to count every single ballot. But Lee Zeldin last night was already talking about working across the aisle in his 4th term. And then further west, in a district that straddles Nassau and Suffolk, in the seat vacated by long-term Congressman Peter King, the man that King endorsed, Andrew Garbarino, said that he's confident he will be named the winner over Army veteran and local politician Jackie Gordon.
I'm so excited to be going down to Washington to be able to bring money home, to be able to bring support home for the residents here.
There's a time for government and a time for politics. And what our community and country has to do so much better now than what we saw happen 4 years ago is that we need to come together when the election is over. and we need to work with each other. We're Americans first.
Long Island's congressional delegation has long been equally split, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and it looks for now that that balance has not shifted, even though absentee ballots will not even begin to be counted for another week. Reporting from Minneapolis, Carolyn Gussoff, CBS 2 News.
Carolyn, thank you. 5:18 right now. Connecticut is reporting a big voter turnout. People stood on long lines like this one in Madison in New Haven County yesterday. Wait times at some polling places were at least an hour. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont voted in Greenwich. He said a historic number of Connecticut voters chose to submit absentee ballots.
We started processing the absentee ballots on Friday and started counting them at 6 o'clock this morning.
According to Connecticut Secretary of State, about 50% of Connecticut's eligible voters had already cast ballots, including absentee ballots, by midday.
Well, there was a dispute at a polling site in Park Slope, Brooklyn on Tuesday. Police responded, but they say no arrests were made. Witnesses say that a supporter of President Trump was trying to intimidate voters. Police say the Trump supporter and another person were harassing each other. Officers spent nearly an hour trying to resolve the issue. Well, this morning, the outcome of 2 big races could come down to the mail-in vote. The presidential election remains too close to call at this hour.
And then there is the highly contested race in New York's 11th congressional district, in which one candidate is declaring victory. The other isn't willing to concede just yet. Political expert Javier Lacayo from SKD Knickerbocker joining us to break it all down. Good morning to you, Javier. Can you tell us your expectations as to when this presidential race may be called?
Yeah, hi, Chris and Mary. It's great to be with you guys. Look, I think that the big message of the night is we need every single vote to be counted. It's true in the Max Rose race, and it's true in some of the biggest battleground states. Right now, I think it's really important to see is that, despite the big lead that Trump seemed to have had in Wisconsin earlier in the night, Vice President Biden has now overcome that margin. And I think Democrats are expecting to see the vice president pull off the same thing in Michigan and in Pennsylvania, where there's still about 1 million absentee ballots that have yet to be counted.
So one of the big takeaways tonight, I think, from what we're seeing and what we're hearing is the president well outperformed a number of the polls that were out ahead of this election.
Yeah, no, Chris, I think that's going to be a big takeaway from, this election. Now, it's 2 presidential cycles in a row where we're seeing significant polling errors everywhere from the Midwest to Florida, where, Biden was averaging ahead by several points in a lot of these battleground states. I think that what you saw is that the president was really able to drive up his base in traditionally really red parts of the country and even parts of New York, like what you're seeing over in Long Island.
I wanted to talk about what you were referring to earlier in regard to Staten Island. The absentee ballots still have to be counted, but will that make a difference in the outcome of this race? Nicole Malliotakis declaring victory there.
It seems unlikely. I think that Nicole Malliotakis now has about a 40,000 vote margin, and that's about what the outstanding absentee ballots are here. But I think that what's so critical in this race and in all of these races moving forward is that we count every vote and that we make it clear that, our elections are sacred and we need to ensure that there's, public trust, public confidence in the turnout and in the outcomes of all of these elections, especially when you have officials at the federal level that are, casting doubts on the possible outcomes.
And let me ask you about that. In a tweet from earlier this morning, President Trump claiming that the election is being, quote, stolen and that the ballots are being cast after the polls close. Any truth to that at all?
This is blatantly false. And let me be really clear. No candidate decides when an election is called. The people decide the outcome of an election, and states certify the official outcomes. So there's absolutely no claim to the president's claims right now. The truth is actually that the ballots that are being counted in a lot of these Midwestern states, in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, these are ballots that have been counted, that have been cast days ago. These are not, ballots that are just coming in after midnight. These are early votes. These are early absentee votes. And we deserve it. Every single voter deserves to have their voice heard in this election. All
right. Javier Lacayo, you sit tight. We're going to get back with you very shortly, but good to speak with you this morning. Coming up next here on CBS 2 News this morning, MTA worker suspended.
Now he says he's being punished for exposing safety concerns on the subway. Taking a look at the GWB on this Wednesday morning. It's 5:25 right now. We've got temperatures in the 40s to start things out on this Wednesday, but it's going to warm up, Elise.
It is going to warm up, I know. So for the city, that 40-degree temperature, 40-plus degree temperature, not so bad. But other parts of the tri-state area are starting this day in the 20s and 30s. So really cold for some of our suburbs. But this is where we end the day in the upper 50s and low 60s for the warmest locations. Expecting a high today of 62 degrees for Central Park. We will watch a warm front lift through the area, and so it is going to usher in some warmer air. We'll also see mostly sunny skies this afternoon. And your 3-day forecast shows that this dry stretch that we're in right now takes us right into the weekend. So a gorgeous day today. Tomorrow mostly sunny, 65, and by Friday 68 degrees. Chris?
Okay, Elise, thank you very much. An MTA worker says he's being punished for exposing safety issues that could endanger fellow workers and the public. Train operator Jan Hicks faces a possible 30-day suspension from his job. He tweeted videos like this one showing conditions that he says put fellow employees at risk for COVID-19. He says another shows police ignoring a woman with a shopping cart, which violates transit rules.
I'm not causing a ruckus. I'm trying to show the ruckus. I'm a passenger. I'm an employee. I'm a citizen. All I want is an orderly subway.
The bigger issue is the one that Hicks is trying to expose. There is still a homeless population that is not being properly taken care of. And we're seeing more and more.
In a statement, the MTA said Hicks violated regulations in part by using his phone while on duty.
It's 5:27 right now. Still ahead, the race for the White House. One side claiming victory, the other side urging patience as votes continue to be counted.
And the Garden State is about to get greener now that voters have approved recreational marijuana. You're watching CBS 2 News this morning.
Live from Studio 46, this is CBS 2 News this morning.
We want all voting to stop.
We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying votes is finished.
President Trump already claiming victory. Joe Biden says wait for the votes to be counted. Right now, the race is still too close to call. We will break down all the numbers for you coming up.
Another Republican claiming victory, this time on Staten Island in the contentious race for New York's swing 11th congressional district.
And New Jersey voters approve recreational marijuana. What this means for the future of pot in the Garden State.
Good morning on this Wednesday, November 4th. I'm Chris Raggi.
I'm Mary Calvi. Welcome to CBS 2 News this morning. We'll have all your election 2020 coverage in just a moment. First, let's get you a check on that forecast. Here's Elise Finch.
Good morning to you. So we do have a cold start to the day. We have temperatures still hovering in the 20s and low 30s. So it is below the freezing mark for a number of locations, especially inland. And as we head out to Long Island, Quag at 29, same for Lakewood. So very cold for some, not so bad in and around the city. We're at 41 degrees. But we will watch a warm front move through the tri-state area this morning, and it will usher in some warmer air. So by the afternoon, we will see things warm up pretty nicely. Just take a look at your day part forecast. I mean, you definitely need your coat out the door this morning, even in and around New York City. But by noon, we should be at about 58 degrees, and we're expecting a high on the day of 62 degrees. So mostly sunny, 62, instead of windy conditions, just a tiny bit breezy, so it should feel pretty nice today. Mary, Chris?
Elise, thank you. 5:31 right now. It is the morning after the election, but the presidential race remains up in the air.
President Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden are still competing in key states that would deliver a victory. Now, we are live with team coverage this morning. 6 reporters across the tri-state area covering every angle of the presidential election and the local races. Let's begin in studio here with CBS 2's Alice Gaynor covering the presidential race for us. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Chris and Mary. Here is the latest. The lead, a razor-thin one in Wisconsin, has flipped to former Vice President Joe Biden. President Trump led earlier last night, but the 169,000 outstanding ballots from Milwaukee and ballots from other cities broke heavily for Biden. There are still a few thousand other votes waiting to be counted. President Trump spoke early this morning, falsely claiming victory and telling supporters he will go to the Supreme Court to stop further legal mail-in ballots from being counted. Former Vice President Joe Biden's campaign says it will fight those efforts. Just before 2:30 this morning, President Trump told a packed room at the White House,
"This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election."
The Biden campaign responded, calling his comments outrageous, unprecedented, and incorrect. The counting will not stop. It will continue until every duly cast vote is counted, because that is what our laws, the laws that protect every American's constitutional right to vote, require. The president also tweeted, "We're up big, but they are trying to, quote, steal the election." Twitter has flagged the statement, saying it might be misleading. Neither candidate has secured the 270 electoral college votes needed to claim victory, as CBS estimates about 5 million votes still need to be counted. Pennsylvania's governor tweeted this morning that his state still has over 1 million mail ballots to count. After midnight, former Vice President Joe Biden spoke at a drive-in rally outdoors at his campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware.
We knew because of the unprecedented early vote and the mail-in vote that it was going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished.
CBS News projects President Trump has won the battleground states of Florida, Ohio, and Iowa. Exit polling revealed supporters of President Trump are more concerned about the economy, even over COVID. CBS News projects Biden has won a number of states, including New York, Massachusetts, and California, picking up the Golden State's 55 electoral votes. A CBS News exit poll finds a majority of voters think the U.S. efforts to control the coronavirus are going badly, which may help Biden. Now, when it comes to the tri-state area, both the Associated Press and CBS News project that in addition to New York, former Vice President Biden won New Jersey and Connecticut. And in the last few hours, the Associated Press also projected he won Arizona. But again, either candidate needs to secure at least 270 electoral college votes. Chris, Mary.
And let's talk about those key states. Electoral college votes for those key states, as you said, the magic number 270.
That's right. So let's break it down for you. I think we have a graphic. That's right. So Wisconsin here, we've got 10 up for grabs. Michigan, 16. Pennsylvania, 20. North Carolina, 15. And Georgia, 16. So that's a total of 77 electoral votes still up for grabs. Mary, Chris.
All right, Alice, thank you so much. It is 5:35, and now to races here in our area and the contentious battle in New York City's 11th congressional district.
With 95% of the precincts reporting, Republican challenger Nicole Malliotakis has declared victory against Democratic incumbent Max Rose. CBS 2's John Diaz joins us live now from outside her headquarters on Staten Island with more. John.
Yeah, good morning, Chris. Good morning, Mary. And Max Rose has a slim chance of catching up to Nicole Malliotakis, but he says he will not concede to this race until every single vote is counted for, including those absentee ballots. But it does appear, though, that in New York City's only swing district, the 11th district, has gone back to the Republicans. Now, all indicators point to Nicole Malliotakis as the victor. Now, the district, which makes up Staten Island and southern Brooklyn, traditionally voted Republican until Rose, an Army veteran and former U.S. Ranger, flipped it back in 2018. Now, the 11th district race has been one of the most contentious in the country. It was a fierce competition, to say the least, and expected to be a close one. But Malliotakis playing to the voters. Its base is white, blue-collar voters, including a substantial number of active and retired New York City police officers and firefighters. Take a listen to what both candidates had to say.
Well, look, a vote for me is a vote to bring public safety back to the streets of our city, to restore law and order, to make sure we reopen our economy, we bring back the American jobs lost here in New York and across the country, and to preserve the American dream.
I am not ignorant to the realities of the results that have already been turned in. But I do know that my opponent will join me in ensuring that the Board of Elections must conduct a fair and transparent process that demonstrates the strength of our democracy rather than undermining it.
Now, in her formal statement released earlier this morning, Malliotakis saying, quote, "This race was about the hardworking New Yorker who obeys the law, pays their taxes, and gets up every morning and goes to work." We're live this morning from New Dorp, Staten Island. John Diaz, CBS 2 News.
John, thank you. It's 5:37 right now. New Jersey voters have overwhelmingly passed a resolution to legalize recreational marijuana.
CBS 2's Corey James is live in Jersey City this morning with more on that. Corey?
Yeah, Chris and Mary, a big move here in New Jersey this morning after a majority of voters here in the Garden State voted to approve the sale of recreational marijuana. And this is coming as the news and a number of ballots are still being counted at this hour. But so far, we know more than 65% of voters supported the sale of recreational marijuana for people who are 21 and older. With this initiative getting approved on the state level, that means New Jersey will join more than a dozen other states that have also approved legalizing marijuana. And political expert Jeanette Hoffman tells us the state legislature is now tasked with passing a law and putting guidelines in place.
Setting up licenses for people who want to set up dispensaries. You're talking about, setting up a limit for THC on products such as edibles. You're talking about setting up fines for driving under impairment of marijuana. You're talking about setting up the tax level of how this product is going to be taxed and where that money is actually going to go. Will it go back to communities? Will it go back to a general fund in the budget?
And people interested in buying marijuana likely will not be able to do that at the start of 2021, and that is because it has taken other states in the past more than a year to get the cannabis industry set up with rules and regulations. But as you can imagine, this has certainly created a lot of opposition, specifically on the local level. About 70 municipalities have already said they will not allow dispensaries in their towns. We also know the New Jersey Association of Chiefs of Police has also expressed its concerns, saying that they are worried about drug-impaired driving. For now, we're live here in Jersey City. Corey James, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Corey, thank you. Let's take a look now at the returns in New Jersey's U.S. Senate race. Incumbent Democrat Cory Booker is the projected winner with 63% of precincts reporting. He faced off against Republican Rick Maida.
Democrats had high hopes of gaining control in the U.S. Senate. So far, it has not happened. Democrats took 2 seats from Republicans in Colorado and Arizona. Republicans flipped a Senate seat in Alabama. Democrats need a gain of 3 to 4 seats to win control of the Senate. Several races remain unresolved. There is a chance control won't be decided until a possible runoff election in Georgia, and that is in January.
Well, Queens voters have chosen a new borough president after a special election was canceled because of the pandemic.
With all of the votes, and City Councilman Donovan Richards Jr. is a winner with 67%. He faced off against Queens County Republican Party Chairman Joanne Ariola, who scored 31%.
And Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is headed for a second term with 91% of the vote reported in the 14th district. Ocasio-Cortez has 69% ahead of John Cummings with 31% and Michelle Caruso Cabrera with 1%.
It is 5:40 coming up. Potential new faces in Congress.
How this election could shift the focus of legislation on Capitol Hill. Those stories next. Give me back the transmitter atop One World Trade Center was among the New York City landmarks lit up in red, white, and blue for election night. The Empire State Building looking good, as well as was nearby Madison Square Garden. And the Kosciuszko Bridge also bathed in patriotic colors for you yesterday. And it was a beautiful night to see all those beautiful colors. And it's going to be a great day today. And guess what? This is a precursor of things to come. Elise, good morning to you once again.
Good morning to you, Chris. And you're right. We did have a good night. I mean, clear skies made for beautiful watching of those landmarks all lit up. But of course, it led to some very cold temperatures. So we're starting this day with temperatures in the upper 20s and low 30s inland. So for a number of locations at or below the freezing mark, and then you head east, things get a little bit warmer. We're at 41 degrees for Central Park, but everybody is going to warm up a little bit more today. We do have a warm front that's going to lift through the area. So our warming trend really gets underway. We were at 53 degrees yesterday, but 62 expected today, and then mid and upper 60s by the time we end the work week. So a really nice increase here from the very cold 44 degrees that we had on Monday that didn't feel like it because of the wind. So today is very different. Here's the warm front. It will lift through the area, so ushering in some warmer air. High pressure also dominating, so we're expecting mostly sunny skies. So not a whole lot to talk about for us today. Things are fairly quiet here at home. Of course, we still have our eye on the tropics. We are still watching what is now Tropical Storm Ada. It was a powerful hurricane before making landfall in Nicaragua. Unfortunately, still moving through Nicaragua right now, west at just 8 miles per hour. So here is the track. Has it moving back out over the water, over Cuba, and right now looks like it's headed toward Florida. Obviously, it will be greatly diminished in power when it does that, but still, we will keep you posted. Still, things are active in the tropics even now. Remember, the tropical season doesn't end until the end of the month. Back here at home, I mentioned things are fairly quiet, and that will be the case not just today, but it looks looks like as we head through the end of the work week, through the weekend, and into early next week, we'll still be in this fairly dry pattern. So your weekend forecast looking like some of fall's finest weather. Sunny skies, temperatures close to 70 degrees on both your Saturday and your Sunday here in the city. The 7-day looks like this: 62 degrees today, 65 for your Thursday, and 68 for Friday. You saw the weekend, and we continue those warm temperatures even into early next week. Mary, Chris?
All right, that should feel nice. Elise, thank you so much. It is 5:45 right now. Turning to Long Island now. Voters in Nassau and Suffolk counties cast ballots in 2 pivotal congressional races.
A 3-term incumbent Republican Lee Zeldin beat Democrat Nancy Goroff to win New York's 1st district, and for the 2nd congressional district, Republican Andrew Garbarino defeated Democrat Jackie Gordon, winning the seat vacated by retiring long-term Congressman Peter King.
And in New York's 17th district, it appears Democrat Mondaire Jones has won the seat that's been held by longtime Congresswoman Nita Lowey.
In a tight race, Jones has 48% of the vote compared to 45% for Republican Maureen McCardle-Schulman. CBS News' Kevin Rincon live at the Board of Elections in White Plains with more on this race. Kevin.
And Chris, it's a changing of the guard. This district, represented here in Rockland and Westchester counties, has been represented for almost 2 decades by Elliot Engel and now Nita Lowey. But there's a changing of the guard as the progressive movement will now be led here by Mondaire Jones. Jones winning, and in order to win, he had to challenge longtime Democrat Nita Lowey. And rather than go through a primary, she retired. So Jones, as the Democrat, took on Republican candidate Maureen McCardle-Schulman, a retired New York City firefighter, and was able to win. As Jones transitions to a role in Washington, he talked about his relationship with the woman he will be replacing, Nita Lowey, the chair of the House Appropriations Committee. She's someone with experience, and that's something Jones says he's tapping into as he prepares for his next chapter.
There is disagreement at times on policy issues. And one thing that I'm really encouraged by is the fact that Congresswoman Lowey and I want to get to the same place on any number of policies. We may differ as to some of the details, but I'm really, really grateful to be charting my own path forward.
And Jones campaigned on progressive issues, including police reform, the Green New Deal, as well as Medicare for all. Live outside the Board of Elections in White Plains, Kevin Rincon, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Kevin, thanks. City Councilman Richie Torres is the projected winner in the 15th Congressional District. Torres will become the first openly gay Afro-Latino member of Congress. He's leading Republican Patrick DeLisis in the race to replace Congressman Jose Serrano.
And in the 16th District, Democrat Jamal Bowman is ahead of Republican Patrick McManus. Bowman beat out Congressman Elliot Engel in the Democratic primary.